Fellow viewers, we are yet again back to Frokil's show, and this time we want to highlight macroeconomic factors causing political instability in our country, Kenya. A lot has been said about the Gen Zs and the problems they are facing. But the Kenyan problem is not just about a generation, because all the other generations are also suffering silently. What could really be the problem, and where are we going wrong? Political instability in Kenya is influenced by several macroeconomic factors that interact with the social, ethnic, and institutional dynamics. And here are the key macroeconomic factors contributing to political instability in Kenya. Number one is high unemployment and underemployment. Youth unemployment. A large portion of Kenya's population is young, and unemployed rates among youth are particularly high. This creates frustration and makes them more susceptible to political mobilization or unrest. Under unemployment, we also have informal sector dominance. Most employment is informal and precarious, offering little economic security, which fuels dissatisfaction with government policies. In line with that, we also have income inequality and regional disparities. Wealth gaps, and these are stark income inequalities between urban and rural areas and among ethnic communities. This often feeds perceptions of favorism or marginalization by the central government. Under income inequality, we also have neglect of certain regions. Regions perceived to be marginalized, e.g. parts of northern Kenya, coast and other opposition strongholds, may feel excluded from national development, increasing the risk of local unrest. The third factor is high cost of living and inflation. Food and fuel prices and persistent inflation, especially for food and fuel, disproportionately affects low-income households and can lead to protests and strikes. Currency depreciation. When the Kenyan shilling depreciates, it receives important prices, which further inflames public frustration. The fourth factor is public debts and fiscal mismanagement. Rising national debt. Kenya's growing debt burden, particularly from external lenders like China, constrains public spending on essential services and fuels public anger. Corruption and misallocation, and allegations of widespread corruption and poor fiscal management erodes trust in institutions and provoke civic unrest. Number 5, we have poverty and slow economic growth. Persistent poverty. A significant portion of the population remains below the poverty line. When economic growth fails to translate into broad-based improvements, political discontent grows. Ineffective redistribution. Government programs often fail to address structural poverty effectively, leading to cyclical protests and instability. Number 6, we have election-related economic disruptions. Pre- and post-election economic slowdowns. Economic activity tends to dip before and after elections due to uncertainty, which can exacerbate existing grievances. Election-linked violence. Disputed elections like in 2007-2008 often led to violence, poverty, destruction, and market disruption, creating negative economic feedback loops. 7. Dependence on agriculture and climate shocks. Climate vulnerability, droughts and floods directly affect food security and rural incomes, especially given Kenya's reliance on rain-fed agriculture. Agricultural price volatility. Sharp price swings in key staples due to weather or global markets often spark discontent, especially among low-income communities. 8. Pandemics. Pandemics, e.g. COVID-19, as a driver of political instability. Pandemics, especially COVID-19, have significantly contributed to Kenya's political instability by amplifying existing macroeconomic challenges and exposing governance weakness. Here is how pandemics factor into the equation. A. Economic disruption. Business closures and job losses, lockdowns and movement restrictions led to widespread business shutdowns, particularly in informal sector, which accounts for over 80% of employment in Kenya. Then there was collapse of tourism and export sectors. Key foreign exchange earners like tourism, horticulture, and flower exports were hit hard, exacerbating currency volatility and fiscal pressure. Then B, increased poverty and inequality. Widening gaps and the economic fallout from the pandemic deepened inequality, with low-income households suffering the most from income shocks, school closures, and reduced access to health services. Then urban informal settlements, densely populated informal settlements in Nairobi and other cities became flashpoints for unrest due to poor access to basic services and food. C. Public debt and fiscal strain. Emergency borrowing. The government increased external borrowing during the pandemic to fund health responses and stimulus efforts, worsening the debt burden. IMF conditionalities. Loans from the IMF and World Bank came with structural adjustment conditions, e.g. subsidy cuts, tax hikes, and that triggered public backlash and protests. Then we have corruption and mismanagement of relief funds. COVID-19 scandals, major corruption scandals involving pandemic relief funds, e.g. the KEMSA scandal, eroded public trust in government and fueled anti-establishment sentiments. Then there was lack of transparency. Poor accountability in the use of pandemic aid funds created perceptions that elites enriched themselves while citizens suffered. Then E, health system exposure. Overstretched public health system. The crisis exposed the inadequacy of Kenya's public health infrastructure, leading to strikes by health workers and dissatisfaction with government priorities. Then F, we have suppression of dissent. Emergency powers misused. Some pandemic-related restrictions were seen as politically motivated, e.g. limiting gatherings during protests, leading to accusations of authoritarianism. Why are the politicians silent on these macroeconomic factors? Politicians in Kenya and in many similar contexts often remain silent or evasive about key macroeconomic issues like unemployment, inequality, debt, and inflation for a combination of strategic, structural, and self-preservation reasons. And here is why. Number one, political survival over economic truth. Short-term focus. Politicians prioritize winning elections and maintaining loyalty over addressing complex long-term economic issues that don't yield quick wins. Blame shifting. Rather than owning problems, many leaders deflect blame to previous administrations, global factors like oil prices, or external lenders like the IMF. Number two, ethnic and patronage politics. Identity over policy. Kenya's politics is heavily shaped by ethnic alliances and patronage client networks. Politicians focus on mobilizing support through identity politics rather than economic platforms. Distribution over production. Political leaders often focus on promising benefits, jobs, tenders, infrastructure to their ethnic bases, rather than tackling root economic problems that require national solutions. But here we have fear of accountability. Corruption links. Many of the economic issues like debt management or poverty are tied to corruption or policy failures. Addressing them would implicate current or former leaders. Then we have opaque systems. Economic mismanagement is often hidden under complex budgeting, procurement, and debt arrangements that politicians don't want to expose. Number 4, we have weak institutional checks. Lack of accountability. Parliament, the judiciary, and oversight bodies are often politicized or weak, so there is little pressure on politicians to discuss or fix economic problems. Then media capture or intimidation. Independent journalism is under pressure and critical voices are sometimes silenced, allowing politicians to control the narrative. 5. International donor dynamics. IMF and World Bank influence. Structural reforms are often donor-driven, e.g. fuel subsidy cuts, but politicians avoid discussing them openly to escape public backlash. Debt diplomacy. Politicians avoid transparency on foreign loans, e.g. from China or Eurobond markets, to maintain strategic relations and avoid public scrutiny. 6. Populist messaging. Promise-based campaigns. Politicians focus on slogans and promises rather than laying out realistic evidence-based economic plans. Avoiding hard truths. Admitting to the depth of unemployment, all debts may alienate voters who expect hope and optimism during campaigns. 7. Election cycle politics. Pre-election silence. Before elections, politicians avoid sensitive economic debates to maintain calm and unity among their supporters. Post-election blame games. After elections, new governments often focus on cleaning up the mess, in quotes, left by their predecessors rather than offering concrete economic solutions.